G'day, I'm Owen Caddo from Regional Men's Health. I'm lucky. My work takes me all over Western Australia and we get to meet a lot of blokes. You'd be surprised how many of them are very shy about talking about their sexual well-being. Issues with prostate enlargement, prostate cancer, erectile dysfunction, infertility, loss of sexual desire. It's all a bit of a no-go zone. The idea of this DVD is to encourage blokes to open up about this stuff because the consequences of not doing anything can be very serious. Who better to tell you about it than other blokes sharing their experiences?
Erectile dysfunction was something that I didn't really think would happen to me. I think it was early October when I had my prostate out, so probably 3 months after that date we started to look at options to try and get a bit of function happening back in that area. I did my best in my mind to try and arouse the situation, but it just never really worked. The closeness in a relationship and the feeling, and that normally is enough to arouse anyone's, penis, I guess you could say, but it just didn't seem to be working, and we knew then that we had to look for an alternative. It's very frustrating when you, as a male, you want to be intimate with your partner and you can't get an erection. It's not the most pleasant situation to be in as a male, because the macho image and the bomb-proof sexuality, I suppose, is all of a sudden gone.
Originally, when he was diagnosed, we were told 3 months, and then the day of the operation, after he'd come out of the anaesthetic, the doctor told me, just very casually, that it was going to be 12 months before we'd be able to have sex. It was my birthday too, so I was pretty devastated. And, it was more about getting him well. It wasn't really about anything at that point in time. We just wanted him to get better and him not to have cancer.
The things that we tried to try and fix the erectile problem was all the tablets, Viagra, Cialis and Levitra. None of them appeared to be working, so then we found a guy that was doing penile injections, self-injections, and the first injection I had was a nightmare. I had a reaction, and then we moved on to looking at a penile implant. The penile implant has put a bit of spontaneity back into our sex life, because with the injections, it was sort of a structured. I had to ask Jodie if she wanted me to inject myself, but with the implant, it's something that we can just do on the spur of the moment. So that's made things a lot better in that regard.
The penile implant has worked out, a lot better than the other options. I guess I felt quite bad about wanting it to happen, but in the end, I've been really, really glad it's happened. Erectile dysfunction could ruin a relationship, but I think that communication is the biggest thing, because it needs to be on an equal, everybody needs to be on the same page. There's no point in somebody fixing erectile if the other person's not interested. It's certainly not for everybody having a penile implant. Certainly not to have self-injections is the way to go for everybody. You just have to find the balance for yourselves, in your relationship. It's worked out really well.
Sexual wellbeing is a very important part of anyone's relationship. Obviously, things that you can do to make sure that you give yourself the best opportunity to maintain that. Just make sure that your health is good, so that you can continue, to have as good a erectile function as you can for as long as you can. The support that I've had from Jodie over the time too has been outstanding. Unless you've got love and support going through the procedures that I went through, I don't think it would have happened. It probably would have been easier just to throw your hands in the air and not tackle some of the solutions we tried. But I think it's very important that for the sake of your relationship that you try as many things as you can.
We're filming tonight for Regional Men's Health. It's a WA thing.
In 2004, when I was 29 years old, I was diagnosed with a seminoma, which is a type of testicular cancer. And I had surgery, so that's the removal of a testicle. I had 4 rounds of chemo over 3 months, and I also had some radiotherapy. And they're some of the experiences that I talk about in my show.
Finally, the 5th doctor asks me to pull down my pants. He puts on these rubber gloves, he cups my balls, and he says these questions. Tell me what you're eating, what's going on in your life. Are you always working, and do you have a wife? No. How are you sleeping? Are you getting any exercise? And Daniel, have you noticed your right ball is oversized? No.
My show is called The Orchid and the Crow because the surgical procedure for the removal of a testicle is called an orchidectomy or an orchiectomy. And that's because the Greek word for testicle is orchis. The crow part is really just a symbol of death. So what I imagine is what happens when that crow sees that orchid. The orchid plant gets its name because the bulbs of the plant look like testicles.
Lance Armstrong, if you're listening, I'm not sure I can get through this. I know you did. You suffered. You suffered so that we could see what's possible. Please, give me strength.
Lance is, as you might know, a testicular cancer survivor. When you look at the way he's lived his life, he's crushed anyone that gets in the way of his success, and he's been quite narcissistic and arguably quite petulant and quite a tyrant.
I have a friend in Lance Armstrong. When I call on him, he will respond. If you're not feeling well, you just ring on that bell. Hold on, he's coming, live strong.
When I think about that time, it was a really extreme time physically, but also emotionally and psychologically. I think the lowest ebb for me was somewhere towards the end of the 2nd round of chemo. I really wasn't sure how I was going to get through it. I had a psychologist who came to me and said, there are good days and bad days. And that was one of the most powerful things. What you're experiencing today isn't necessarily what you're going to experience tomorrow. I think people enjoy the show because it's a combination of a good night out and things that we can relate to in terms of what do we do when these dark things happen to us? What have other people experienced, and how do we find strength? I think a good way to describe it is gallows humour, which is when something is so extremely dark that all you really know how to do is laugh at it. There's a long tradition of Jewish people and Irish people who've gone through extreme things and finding humour in it because that's all you really know how to do. So if I think back about my journey along that in terms of health, if I was aware, I could have inspected my testicles. It's one of the easiest things to do and it doesn't cost any money. And it's just a no-brainer. If you're a man, in your mid-teens to your 40s, it's such an easy thing to do. The message is go check your balls.
Oh, who wouldn't wanna be blessed? Oh, who wouldn't wanna be blessed?
In 2010, we'd organised for Regional Men's Health to come and run a pit stop at our Lancelin operations. The idea was for them to talk to trucking contractors and farmers that came to collect lime.
Have you had your blood pressure checked recently?
Not since a flying medical a while ago.
Okay,
Yep.
rightio. And how was it then? Do you remember? They
Normal, I
said?
think I can't remember the exact figures, but it hasn't been a problem so far, so we'll see. Yeah.
See how we go today.
And during the course of the day, I was talking to the staff and was queried, have you been checked up with some of the things that we're talking about? And I think I was just a pretty normal bloke, and I said, no, well, I hadn't really. I had had a PSA test with blood, but talking to the staff, they sort of advocated at the time that the rectal examination was really part of diagnosis for some people. And it sort of made me go away and think for a couple of weeks, and not that I had any symptoms. My PSA was in the normal range for my age. I was 48 at the time. So it was something that I dwelled on for a month or so, and then it got the better of me. I thought, well, I better go and get this checked. Had the check, and next thing I was having a biopsy. I got the results. The doctor explained it was taking sort of like, I think 12 or 16 segments out of an orange, and he said there was several of them, those segments were rotten, and there was plenty of them that weren't normal. They were on their transition from normal cells to abnormal or cancerous cells. He was pretty straightforward that this was cancer and it really needed to come out. I had the surgery and had the whole prostate removed. I had what's called a radical prostatectomy. I had it done laparoscopically, which is just small holes rather than an old system which tended to be more invasive. It's quite a big operation, in hospital for 5 or 6 days afterwards, and recovery was really quite slow over 2 or 3 weeks. It sort of knocked me around a bit more than I had envisaged. Emotionally, I think I dealt with it reasonably well. I guess I'd made a decision that I didn't want to have the cancer with me, so the only way to do it was to follow what the doctor's advice was, to have it removed. There haven't been a lot of complications. I guess erectile dysfunction is probably the main one, but no real other issues with bladder control, so I think I was pretty lucky. Support is an amazing part of it. I was helped a lot by people that had the same operation previously. I think I found them more useful than talking to the doctors, because it was contexted into a way that I understood in their life. Some very, very helpful people, and that's one of the reasons that I want to try and do the same thing for other people now.
Okay, Steve. Bradley. Yeah, I've only got one pack, but we'll go and get another one. But
awareness is absolutely the critical thing, and I think the Regional Men's Health Initiative is just so brilliant at doing that. They helped me identify my issue. I think resourcing for regional men's health is a really important issue. There's only a few of them. It's a big state of WA, and being able to talk to more and more people is vital in getting them to be aware of the issues that face people.
So I've got that small model here. Basically here is the male anatomy. There's your bladder. Well, men in general, in my experience, aren't really that comfortable talking about their sexuality. So it's not usually until something goes wrong before they go and seek assistance. Men often don't talk about these things because they're a private issue, and it's really difficult to go and start talking about the bits down below. To a man, that's an evidence of his manhood, the fact that there could be some problems there, some cracks in his armour. It's not really a conversation that men go and have with one another. There are a few things that can go wrong with the sexual function in blokes, and we know that from the ages of 40 upwards, 40% of men will notice some form of erectile dysfunction. At 50 years of age, 50% of men will notice some problems. These can be things like premature ejaculation, no ejaculation, pain with sex, lack of erections, or erections that aren't quite like what they used to be. Basically what happens is, because you've got cancer in the prostate, we're going to get the surgeon to basically remove the prostate. Understanding the prostate is very important for men. It's a vital organ. It controls fertility, releases fluid, and is really important in urinary and sexual function. 4 things can go wrong with the prostate. There can be an enlargement, there can be pain, something called prostatitis, there can be infections, and there can be prostate cancer itself. Prostate cancer means there's abnormal cells growing within the prostate, and these can become malignant if they're not caught early. Good, bending the front leg, keeping the back leg off the ground. Exercise is an extremely important component of a man's general health and well-being. We have pelvic floor exercises, which really help with urinary and sexual function. We also have, where men are incontinent, for example, after prostate surgery, and need to get the pelvic floor working in tandem with all of the core and other abdominal muscles to really try and help retrain the areas that are having problems. Well, most men don't know they have a pelvic floor, and it's really important that they get to know that area of their anatomy. So I always say, think of just resting gently and quietly, letting your tummy relax, and then focus on your man bits and gently lift your nuts to your guts. You need to do that about 10 times quickly, so lifting up, letting go, lifting up, letting go, and then doing about 10 where you lift and hold for up to 10 seconds with an approximate 10-second rest between each one. I always encourage men to go and actually start walking daily if possible for at least 30 minutes up to an hour. We want to get their blood flow going, because if we get their heart function going, we get their heart function going. So we get this combination of blood vessel dilation in all the areas that we need it for sexual function. And the same goes with the pelvic floor. A little bit of focus on the pelvic floor specifically really helps enhance general cardiovascular health in the sexual regions. Gel will be a little bit cold, and I just have to place it just beneath the navel. And we're going to do a little scan here. It's extremely important for men to go and get health advice whenever they first notice that they've got something wrong. Something like prostate cancer is not generally noticed until it's got too late and quite aggressive. So the earlier we can get detection of anything that you notice being abnormal, go along to see your GP as quickly as possible, because prevention is much better than cure. If a man gets trouble with sexual function, there's lots of really easy things he can do to help himself. We know pelvic floor exercises are very good at increasing local blood flow to the penis, testicles, and all the areas that are important in men's health. There's also medications, such as things like Viagra, which can be taken regularly. And then there's also things like vacuum pumps, which can stretch out the penile tissues and get blood flow going, or injections. So there's lots of things that can be helpful. It's really important for men to be in tune with their bodies, to notice if there's any discomfort anywhere, if they've got changes in their urinary or sexual function, because it often is highlighting a bigger or more distressing problem at hand.
Vasectomy is a medical procedure, one that's performed on a man, done on a man. Remember when you twisted up your garden hose? Well, essentially that is the plan, that is the plan. You make a small incision in the scrotal skin, isolate the vas, and then you hold it in position with a towel clamp. Then you snip the fibrous tissue. Then the guy doesn't need contraception in relations with the girl that is in a long-term stable relationship with. It doesn't work for STI protection, and the success rate of reversal is only 30 to 60%. It's a big decision. Also, we think you should know that 1 in 2,000 men can become fertile again, which is kind of scary considering how much they must want to not have kids. Well, I guess that's the definition of the word irony. Goodbye fertility. Goodbye to babies. Say goodbye to kids like say goodbye to kids like us.
No one knows better than you when something is wrong, and there's no better time to talk about a problem than right now. Talk to a loved one, a mate, see a doctor. It doesn't matter as long as you take that first step. Sexual wellbeing is important to all men. And remember, Regional Men's Health is always there for you. Give us a call or visit our website. We're happy to steer you in the right direction.